The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, welcome. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Irene Varley. I'm the Director of Education for the Dibble Institute. Today's topic is Can't Buy Me Love, How to Be Rich in Life in Love with guest speaker Sybil Solomon. I'd like to introduce you to Kathy Guidry, our webinar organizer as well. You'll hear her throughout the broadcast helping us out. Just a few notes on housekeeping. If something should happen to your audio on the computer, there is an access phone number and code that's here on the screen, but it's also included in your link with the invitation. So if something should happen that you're disconnected from us, please call in. And a reminder that you will be muted during this broadcast. We ask that you can type any questions that come up with for Sybil during the program in your question box, and we will either get to them as they are appropriate to the topic that she's discussing, or later on at the end of the broadcast with questions and answers. And we will be also asking for your answers to certain questions during the program, and we will give you directions on what to do with that. There is a time when you'll be asked to raise your hand, and that hand is an icon that's in your control panel. If you notice, it's across the top next to your name. If you'd look for that. So when you're asked to give an answer, raise your hand, that's where you click on. This webinar is recorded and will be available in 3 business days on our website. So with that, it's 60 minutes. Let's get started. I have a picture here of Charlie and Helen Dibble. I'm often asked how we received our name, but I'd like to also mention that our mission is to equip young people with the skills and knowledge they need to develop healthy romantic relationships now and in their future. Charlie Dibble, the founder of the Institute, was an aeronautical engineer, a man who really enjoyed a challenge. He dedicated his retirement years to working with young people. In doing so, he became well aware of the emotional challenges to their long-term well-being and their future self-fulfillment. This became most evident when in the late 80s at his grandniece's wedding, she responded to him, "Oh, Uncle Charlie, this is just my first wedding." It was the time the divorce rate was at its peak, and this very much concerned Charlie. He had heard the painful stories following the breakup of the families from the youth he worked with. To make a long story short, Charlie quickly realized little was being done to address the development of skills needed to form successful marriage, committed relationships. Charlie was concerned with the decreasing models of healthy relationships teens had to emulate. So in 1996, Charlie, with the cooperation of fellow business colleagues, educators, and friends, founded the Dibble Fund, now known as the Dibble Institute. Charlie's vision was to have accurate, unbiased, and timely research information available for you. We pride ourselves in remaining true to Charlie's vision. And with that in mind, I would like to introduce our speaker today, Sybil Solomon, a woman who has also dedicated her life helping others understand their personal relationship with money and the broad implications of that with making healthy decisions in life. Sybil has been a speaker with very diverse audiences, such as the NFL, adolescent ambassadors in the D.C. area, also national education groups, community action agencies, and women's programs. So with that, join me in welcoming Sybil to our broadcast today. Hi, Sybil.
Hi, Irene. Thank you so much for the introduction, and hopefully, can you all see the screen?
Yes, it's perfect.
Are you? Great. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm totally delighted to be here. I know that we have a large group of people with us, and I'm hoping that today that you'll understand a lot more about money and about how that affects your relationships. So, to get started, I know that on the line right now we have people who are educators, administrators, counselors, coaches, youth leaders, people from faith-based and community programs, and teens to young adults. Whoops, sorry about that. That's a wide range of people, and I hope that we'll be able to answer your questions and meet all your needs. The first thing that I'd like to say is many of you are going to be working with young people who have a lot of money. They come from very affluent families and they live in affluent areas. There's others of you who will be working with people, with young people who are very poor, and they're trying very hard just to have enough money to keep up and do what needs to be done. The truth is, when it comes to money and the psychology of money, what we feel inside of us has nothing to do with the amount of money that we actually have. The next thing is that some of you are working with youth that are leaders, and it seems like everything's going really well for them. On the other hand, some of you are working with youth that have a lot of day-to-day struggles, problems, and are having a hard time just making it through. Some of you are coming to this looking at being a financial counselor or a financial educator, and you're really focused on financial competency. So we're going to be talking about finances. The truth is, though, that what our research is showing us is that when you teach financial skills, that's not enough. That people can know what they need, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do it. Some of you are involved in entrepreneur programs, and some of you in life skills programs. So hopefully everybody will be able to get some things out of this that will be helpful to you in your own situation. If you have questions that aren't answered, please feel free to put the questions up here, and at the end you'll have my contact information, and you can always contact me. I'm always happy to talk with anyone. So, quick little activity. I'm wondering, how much money do you have on you right now? And three things. One is, for some people, do you know exactly how much money that you have? Do you have an idea of how much money? Or do you not have any idea of how much money you have on you at all? And the next question is, where is your money? You have your money in your wallet, so it's all the 1s, 5s, 10s, and 20s, and it's put in a special place and they're all facing in the same direction? Or do you have them sort of scrunched in a wallet, put in your purse, someplace where you know where it is, but it's not in any particular order? Or maybe you have no idea where your money is. It's just put in your pocket or put at the bottom of your purse, or just laying around on the top of a dresser someplace or in a drawer. That alone gives you a lot of information about you and your relationship with money. People who take care of their money tend to also take care of themselves. When they treat their money with respect, they tend to treat themselves with respect. And when you treat yourself with respect, that affects how you are in relationships. So we're going to be seeing how these things evolve as we go on. A quick thing, though, is if you're working with youth or adults around money and you want to help them very quickly do something, tell them to every day when they want to feel in control to make sure that they've counted their money, they know where it is, they have it in order, they have the bills, nice and flattened down, and somehow that will help them feel a lot more in control. When you feel more in control of your money, somehow you also feel more in control of your life. Okay, I'm going to be asking you to raise your hand here. The average teen from 12 to 19, do you think that they spend more than $75 a week? And if you agree, just raise your hand.
And Sybil, I'm going to give them a few minutes, and you'll see the raise hand on your control panel. It looks like a few, maybe about 20% think so.
Okay, well, here's the truth. The average teen not only spends $75 a year, but on average, according to a Schwab survey in 2007, they spend about $103 a week, which is over $5,000 a year. Now, some of you may be thinking, you've got to be kidding. The kids that I know, they're lucky if they have $10 a week. You know, they're really struggling. Well, of course that's true for a certain percentage of the population. However, if you go to a high school where you have kids from a low-income neighborhood and you look at what's on their feet, you'd be surprised that many of them are wearing shoes that cost well over $100. If you look at, if you go by a local convenience store or supermarket, again, in an area where there's a low-income area, that one of the things you'll see are a lot of kids are coming out with those great big drinks or with cigarettes or with other fast food items that maybe they only cost $1, $2, $3, but they're doing that many times a week. It's just amazing how much people are spending. I always find it interesting when I go into a supermarket or a convenience store and I see a young person working there and they have long fingernails with all the painting and stuff on it. That's not cheap. And I know that they're working because they don't have a whole lot of money, but that's what they're spending their money on. Okay, let's talk about the choices that we make. We all know that to eat healthy, we should be eating fruits and vegetables. But how many people, when they are faced with a nice healthy breakfast or going somewhere where there's donuts or cinnamon rolls, will choose the least healthy choice? Now you know better, so why do you do that? Well, research shows that just knowing is simply not enough. You have to get to some of the emotional issues as well. And that's what we're going to do today. The first part, we're going to be talking about how we make our choices. We'll do Brain 101, talk about subconscious choices or what a habitude is, and the 6 major influences on our choices. In part 2, we're going to quickly go over Money Habitudes, which is a tool to help you access what motivates choices and can help you work with making more successful changes. Okay, you ready for Brain 101? Some of you have had a lot of information about the brain, so this is just a quick overview or introduction for people. The brain is divided, we're going to look at it as 3 different sections. On the right, you see the neocortex, which is the newest part of the brain, and the outer part. And then the limbic system, and inside of that is the reptilian system. So forget all those big words, and let's think about the neocortex as the professor. The professor thinks about facts. He knows what he wants to prove, where he wants to go, and how he's going to get there. And it's very logical, rational, and very much thinking about future consequences. The limbic system, which is the emotional part of the brain and an older part of the brain, let's think of that as a puppy. A puppy is not worried about the future at all. Just wants to know, will you love me now? Will you give me food now? Can you throw the ball for me right now? And that's the extent of it. If anything comes around that scares him or is painful, he wants to run in the other direction. But basically, he wants to enjoy pleasure and avoid pain. And then the reptilian part of the brain is the smallest part, and that's the oldest part. And that represents survival. When we go into that reptilian part of the brain, all we're concerned with is staying safe and secure. And our responses are fight, flight, or freeze. So what does that have to do with money? Let's say that the professor, let's say that we have a rider and an elephant. And the rider represents the professor. The rider knows what they want to do, where they want to go, and what the consequences are. And in this case, our rider is Elise. Elise has just gotten her paycheck. She's been working after school and on the weekends, and she's going to take her money, and she's on her way to the bank. The reason she's going to the bank is that when she graduates from high school, she already has plans to do something very special this summer with her youth organization, and she needs to save up money for that. So Elise is riding on her elephant, and the elephant represents the emotional part of the brain, the puppy and the python. And as she's going to the bank, there's nothing in her way, there's no obstacles, the puppy's having a good day, there's nothing threatening her, so the reptilian brain is not reacting, and she is going to the bank. Yes. Now what happens? As she's going to the bank, she happens to pass a store where there's jewelry, and a number of her friends are there. Well, something you might want to know is that 80% of girls think of shopping as a hobby or a favorite activity, and 81% of girls follow the fashion trends of their friends more than their parents, ads, or celebrities. So as Elise is going past the jewelry store and looking at those earrings, she's thinking to herself, whoa, there are my friends. Whoops, I need to go to the bank. And what's going to happen? The logical part of her brain, because she's the driver, is saying, I'm saving up for this trip. You know, I don't need those earrings. But the emotional part of her brain is saying, gee, what will my friends think? You know, I'll fit in better with my friends. My boyfriend loves dangling earrings on me. I haven't bought anything in 2 weeks. I deserve that. And if I stop and talk with them and I don't buy the earrings, maybe they'll think that I can't afford them, because after all, I am working and they're not. So when we look at the research in neuroscience, what we like to believe is that because we know how to make logical choices, we like to believe that we are making logical choices. But the truth is, for every one logical choice that's coming down, you have 5 emotional messages that are working against that. And if you haven't done anything to be prepared for those emotional messages, the door snaps shut and you can't even access the logical part of the brain. So let's go back to the rider and the elephant. What do you think will happen? Will she make it to the bank? I don't think so. Unless she's been prepared ahead of time, she's going to be buying that jewelry, and being with her friends and putting on those earrings for her boyfriend, and no money in the bank, even though she knew better. So let's talk about how those messages get into your brain. What's a habitude? A habitude is a combination of attitudes and habits. These are your first thoughts or feelings, they're subconscious, and your habit is your automatic action or reaction. So let's talk about a dog habitude. For example, if Jimmy grew up with a dog and he loves dogs and the dog and he were best friends, when he sees a dog now, he goes, oh, nice dog, that's fun, you know, and he smiles. That's his attitude, his first thought. And when he sees a dog, his first action will be, he's going to pet the dog or play with the dog. What if Jimmy had been brought up where he'd had a bad experience with a dog? Then his attitude would be, when he sees a dog, oh no, and he can feel fear, and that reptilian part of his brain is going to react, and he's going to run and get away from it. That will be his habit. Well, how does that deal with money? Here's Jim and Joey. Both of them had been promised a car for graduation. Well, when graduation came, they both got a 10-year-old Toyota. And Jimmy's reaction was, you're giving me a used car and I'm going to have to pay for the gas and the insurance expenses? I expected a really neat car, a new car. I could see myself driving around in that and impressing my friends and having a girlfriend in that car and going places. Right? But his friend's response was, whoa, cool, that's great. Thanks, Mom and Dad. You've given me a car. Now I can get to work, I can go out, I can be more independent. Those are their very first thoughts. Okay? And what's their habit? Well, for the guy who is happy about getting that car, he's going to set up a budget. Maybe he's going to talk to his parents about what money he's going to be needing. He's going to take some actions. Maybe he'll get a job. Maybe he'll talk with his parents about what money that they can help with and how he can work this out. The other guy, though, Jimmy, he's angry, and his habit may be, instead of doing something maybe to earn a different car, he may just go out and start drinking. Or he might not even drive the car, keep it a secret. He doesn't even want his friends to know about it. Or maybe he'll withdraw, and instead of going out and doing things with his friends where he's driving, he'll just stay home. So we're talking about what are those automatic, subconscious reactions that we don't even realize why we're doing what we're doing. Right? All of us, every single one of us, has a board of directors inside of our brains. And that board of directors provides you with the messages. So when you go to do something and you hear these little voices, you might not even be aware of it. They're coming from a collection of different experiences that you've had. The first one is due to your personality, your personal experiences in your family. And then you have other messages coming from your society and culture, your religious and spiritual beliefs, and the media. So let's talk about each of these and how these 6 influences affect the way that people manage their money. Okay, the first is personality. Any of you who have children or have multiple children probably know within the first week of life that they seem to already have a personality. And now you're all working with teenagers and young adults, and what you might see is that some of them just seem very responsible and very reliable. And what happens then is they're given more opportunities to be responsible. When you need help with something, you probably go to one of those more responsible people. And as a result, they're getting more and more reinforcement that says, oh, I can do this, I can take on things, people think well of me. On the other hand, if you have a student who just never seems to quite get things done on time, the chances are you are not going to approach that student and give them more responsibility. So simply because of the dynamic of a personality, they're being given different opportunities to grow, to experience working with money, to experience taking things on. With personal experiences, we have some young people who they seem just golden. They're always the first one that gets chosen to be on the team by their friends when they're younger and chosen to be on the sports teams as they get older and they're in high school. The same students may also get good grades. They may have parents that give them opportunities where maybe they can sing in their church or they can perform in different ways, but they feel really good. And when it comes to money, again, they're starting out with such a good platform of feeling like, I can do this, I can take this on, I've met lots of challenges, so dealing with money is just one more challenge. Now, some people don't have the best experiences, and in fact, some people have had some really scary things happen to them. By the time students are 18 years old, between 10 and 59% of women have been physically, sexually, or emotionally abused, according to World Health Standards statistics. And between 10 and 39% of boys have been physically, emotionally, or mentally abused by the time they are 18. We also have people, as they're growing up, they live in very unpredictable environments. That may be because there's drugs or alcohol. It may be because they have a parent with emotional problems. There's any number of reasons that their lives are unpredictable. The outcome of that is, when it comes to money, typically one of 3 things will happen. They either will hold on to money so tightly and so carefully that they can't enjoy doing things. So if friends ask them to go someplace, even if they have $10, they can't spend the $10. They have to hold on to it. Even if they can afford to wear something or do something like their friends are doing, they won't do it. The money becomes all important. If they're given the opportunity to go to a really good school, but it means they're going to have to pay something towards it, they won't do that either. So security becomes a big issue. The second way people respond is they become very spontaneous. The message in their head is, if I couldn't control what happened to me and I never knew what to expect tomorrow or even in an hour, why should I worry about planning for the future? If there's something I want to do right now, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take advantage of it. And they don't stop to think about money. So if they've just gotten their paycheck or they've just gotten their allowance, they'll go and they will just spend it without worrying about other expenses they might have later in the week, let alone next year or the year after that. The third way it comes out with money is the person who's more of the victim. And the message in the back of their head is, if I couldn't control what happened to me in the past, then why would I think I can control things in the future? And as a result, they give up. And they let other people make their decisions and other people manage their money and make their money decisions. So if somebody goes on a date and the guy is the one that's spending the money, the girl might feel that she owes him because he spent money on her. And if he starts putting pressure on her, she doesn't feel that she has any of that control and will more often say yes than no in those situations. So that's the hardest thing we're going to talk about, but many of you are working with teens and young adults who have had these experiences. If you're working with adults, they've had the experiences, and those experiences don't go away. They're still sitting there, and they're affecting the way we manage our money. So let's talk about, after personality and personal experiences, some things with our family. We get lots and lots of messages from our family. Some of the messages we get by observation. So you go out with your mom, and your mom sees something that she likes, and she just buys it. She never says anything about thinking about money. So that's an observation. It's like when you go out, if you see something, you can just buy it. No worry. The second thing are inherited messages. Those are messages that really aren't our reality, but we've inherited them. So for example, my father grew up during the Depression, and he grew up in a family that was very poor. So for him, money was extremely scarce. It was something you had to take really close care of. Anything you spent money on had to be really taken care of. And my life, we didn't have a lot of money, but things weren't that desperate. But yet I inherited that message from him. And our young people are inheriting messages from their parents as well. And then there's the things that our young people actually hear, the messages that are told to them. So let's try a few messages. All right. Irene, what do you think that first message is there?
Well, that's a message I heard loud and clear. What do you think? Money grows on trees?
Absolutely. And what about that second one?
Oh, gosh. Oh, yeah. It was something about your pennies. A penny saved is a penny earned.
That's right. Kath, what do you think that that third one there, that dollar sign is?
Well, I suspect that's the love of money is the root of all evil.
You're right. And for people who believe that the love of money is the root of all evil, frequently they forget and they think it's money is the root of all evil. And if they believe that, then they don't want to hold on to money. They want to get rid of it as quickly as they can. What's that one in the bottom left there, Irene?
Oh, gosh, let's see, a grave. You can't take it with you. Or I have some friends now who are in their retirement years who think they have to leave all their money to their children. So instead of doing some fun things in their retirement years, are saving their money so they can give an inheritance to their children.
That's right. And some kids grow up believing that they're entitled to their parents' money. And as a teenager, if there's something they want and they see that their parents, or they believe that their parents have enough money, they think that they should just get it without having to work for it. And the last one is, if you have lemons, make lemonade. Make the best of, yeah, make the best of your situation. And so those are some sayings that are just out there. Let's look at some other types of things that could affect our young people. The first one there is you have somebody working at a computer. Many of our children are raised in families where there's a workaholic, where their parent or whoever the responsible adult is in their family never has time for them. And the message that they get is, money is more important than you. You know, it's more important that I go in really early and I come home late. It's more important that I work than I show up at your activities. And they start feeling like, well, what do I have to do in order to be seen, to be valued, right? And when you don't value yourself, then you put yourself down in relationships as well. Right? The next one is that airplane. We often think of children having a lot of issues with money when they grow up in poverty. But just as many children grow up with parents, well, maybe not just as many children, but some children grow up with parents who have quite a bit of money. And again, they're too busy doing the things that the money allows them to do to have time for their children. So their children are being raised by other people while their parents are jet-setting around, visiting, going to things. Maybe they're not leaving the area, but they're very involved in social engagements. Sometimes it's even social welfare things, doing good works, but they never seem to have time for their children. And in some cases, if you see those gifts on the bottom, in some cases what they may say is, oh, I'm really sorry I couldn't be there for your game, but I got this for you. And now what they're learning is they really can't depend upon the people, but people will use money to buy things to kind of pay them off, to try and even the score. A lot of times we see this where there's divorces, where a parent feels guilty that they are not with their child, and what they do is they try and make up for it by spending money, buying things for them. Okay. And the last one might surprise you. You can see there's Girl Scout cookies. So what can be the message around Girl Scout cookies? As our children are growing up, very frequently they are involved in fundraisers. And in one family, the parent may take whatever it is that they're selling, cookies or other things, to work and may sell them. And their child wins the award for selling the most cookies. Or maybe they just buy them all and give them away to friends. And again, their child will get recognized for selling the most cookies. On the other hand, another child who's selling the cookies on their own may not sell that much. So what messages might they get? You know, the child who is not winning the awards but working on their own may feel like they don't have a chance, that they don't get recognized, that they're not a winner, that if they don't have a parent who can pave the way for them, if they don't have people that can make things happen, then there's no sense in trying, and they are already set up in their careers to not make as much money frequently. Okay, so I'd like you to think about what were some of the messages that you've received. And while I'm talking, if you can just write down for yourself, or if you'd like to write it down and share it, what's one message that you've received? And then how did you get that? Was it a message that you observed, that was said to you, or something that was inherited? And you can see there, one of the messages that I got was, it's better to give than to receive. So I would always give gifts to my friends, but would always set it up so they wouldn't necessarily know when things were happening for me and wouldn't give me a gift. So, have you taken a moment to write down a message?
Well, Sybil, it looks like one person has said that when their parents got together to do the budget, it was just a hard time in the house, a lot of fussing, and that sure didn't give her a good message about budgeting money or working with money.
Yeah, and that's a big issue, that one of the things families frequently don't talk about is money. As a matter of fact, If anything, children are typically taught you don't talk about money. It's way too private. You never ask about the price of things. You never tell people how much money you earn. You certainly don't tell them if you even know what your parents earn or what they paid for something. You never share that.
That's right.
So they get the message you don't talk about money.
I'm sorry. And Sybil, we've got Jean saying that she learned how, actually a positive thing, how to save for the future events. And Christy is talking about her parents were farmers, and the message that she got was money was just so hard to come by that you had to hang on to it and stretch it and be very careful with spending the money. And
well, that's great.
yeah, and then Jenna talks about hearing, we'll never pay off this house again and again. And I think that's one that a lot of us here whose parents were homeowners for sure. And but Dixie has shared with us that she had always heard that there's always a way, they'll always find the money.
Yeah. You can see we all get really very different messages. And the interesting thing is that two children in the same family may get exactly the same message, but they hear it differently because of their own personality and their own experiences, and they respond to it very, very differently. So thank you for sharing the questions, your comments actually, your messages, and let's move on. Okay. Our society, community, and culture provide us many, many messages when it comes to money. So for example, let's think about gifts. When you were raised, if you were going to give a gift to somebody for their birthday or for the holidays, what in your family, in your community, was it something that should be expensive or personal or handmade? Did you always leave the price tag on so they could return it? Or did you always be told that you have to take the price tag off because that's really awful to let people know how much you spend? And then what about money? In some cultures, giving money as a gift is considered really crass and unthoughtful, and in others, it's considered really wonderful. Okay? Let's think about wedding cultures. Many of these teens have wedding visions in their brains, and they're planning for their weddings, or they're young people in their 20s and they're planning for their weddings. In some cultures, you have weddings that are very formal, and it's expected that people are going to have a sit-down meal. And in other cultures, it's expected that they will have coffee and punch and cake. And if that person were to spend the money for a big sit-down dinner, in her culture, people would make fun of her for being wasteful. However, if somebody who's from a culture where they do the sit-down dinners just served punch and cake, other people might think they were cheap. So we get a lot of messages. Okay, let's talk about young people buying shoes. And if you would respond here, how much, if you know a young guy who spent $75 on a pair of athletic shoes, what would his friends think? Would they think he was A, cheap, B, showing off, or C, that's a normal amount to spend? And if you would respond, and Kathy can let us know how things are going.
Yeah, well, it looks like the majority of folks are saying that they would answer that's normal.
Okay, so if you have a young person that within his group of friends spending $75 was normal, then if he were to shop someplace where he got his shoes for $20 or $30, his friends may call him cheap. But if he's hanging out with kids that really don't have money, and maybe they're getting their shoes from Goodwill, and they find out he spent $75 on shoes, they would think that he was showing off. So how we relate to people and what we share with them very much is determined by who we hang out with and what they think of us. Okay. Religious and spiritual beliefs are another way that we're influenced, and we're not going to be talking about religion and spiritual beliefs, but I'd like you to think about how the students that you work with are influenced by where they go to church, by the types of things that they believe in. What were the messages that they're getting about giving? What are the messages that they're getting about receiving? You have some young people who come from homes where there's very, very little money, and yet they have been trained and taught and believe in that you give to help other people, and they're very generous, which is a wonderful thing, and sometimes they're generous to a fault where they actually don't have enough for themselves. In other culture, in other religions, they're taught that it's not all that important to give. It's important that you use your God-given gifts in order to be successful. Those are very different messages. And it's just an important thing for students to think about what are the messages that they've gotten and how does that interpret in their own life. And lastly, the media. Oh my. The media, depending upon which research you look at, they say that every day that every teenager is seeing between 800 and 8,000 ads a day between the television, written materials, and of course, if they're on the internet, which most students are these days, and on their phones, they're getting one ad after another that's telling them you need this and creating needs for them. They don't differentiate between what's a want and what's a need. They make them be very exposed to the fact that if you want to be popular, if you want to be accepted, if you want people to care about you, if you want to be successful, then you need an iPhone. You know, you need to dress a certain way. You need to drink a certain thing. And it's very insidious because when they watch television and they watch the movies, they never talk about money. So you see people driving great cars and going out on great dates, to places to eat, to dances. All these places always have expenses involved with them. You have to have money in order to do those things. You very rarely will ever see teenagers or young people on television or even adults talking about choices that they had to make between doing this and buying something for the future. So those are the 6 influences, and just to briefly go over them, you have personality, personal experiences, family, society, culture, and community. Then we have religion and spiritual beliefs, and lastly, we have the media. And now moving on, if you're interested in more information about how the brain works, about looking at the psychology of money and how that affects it, I've given you some books here that are really great. We won't stop to go over them now, but this will be available. You can access it in 3 days, so you can come back and you can write down any of these. For any of you who are working one-on-one, there's a new book called Bringing Money into the Conversation that I recently published with a co-author, and this has a bunch of activities that can help you bring money into the conversation because it's such a difficult topic to talk about. Now, let's talk about a tool that I've developed called Money Habitudes. Just curious, if you are already using Money Habitudes or you already know about Money Habitudes, if you could just raise your hand, I would be curious to know that. Okay? The cards actually were developed in response to realizing that people have such a difficult time talking about money. And our teens are setting that up for the future, and we're thinking about their relationships, how that plays out. So I developed a deck of cards called Money Habitudes based on the research of the 6 most prominent patterns of habits and attitudes that we all have when it comes to money. There's one deck for teens. Money Habitudes is for 18 to 25-year-olds. And then there's a deck of cards for adults, which is also available in Spanish. So let's look at the teen cards.
Sybil, I just might let you know about 10 people have said that they actually have used the cards before.
Great, thank you. Okay, when you open up a deck of cards, the first thing that you see are 3 blue cards, and those are informational cards. On the back of those, you're going to be using those as sorting cards. It's so simple to use that one green card has all the information that you need. The yellow cards are used for interpretation, And then the cards with all the bright pictures are the ones that have statements on it. So you take those 3 blue cards, flip them over, and they say that's definitely me, maybe, sometimes it depends, and that's absolutely not me. And as you read through the cards, and each person can do this themselves, you sort the cards. So for example, I'll spend money on other people or buy presents for my friends even when I can't really afford it. If that sounds like you, then you put it in the that's definitely me pile. For some people, though, they go, you've got to be kidding. I wouldn't spend my money on other people or buy presents for my friends unless I had the money. And then it would go in the that's absolutely not me. And others, it would depend. It seems like most of my friends have more money to spend than I do. Well, again, where does that fit for the teen that you're working with? And what kind of conversation will come out of that? If that teen feels like other friends have more money to spend, does that mean that they're not going to go out and do things with other friends, that they're going to stay home rather than be embarrassed? Does that mean that when it comes to relationships with a girlfriend or a boyfriend, that they're going to feel like they can't keep up, or they're not good enough, so they're not going to, they're going to feel like they're not worthy of having relationships with other people? No. So these are the 6 patterns of habits and attitudes. The first one is giving, and these are people who, when they get money, they enjoy giving it to other people. It makes them happy to see other people get the money and use the money. The security, these people like to hold the money close to them. They're very careful. They're very cautious. They might not trust other people. When you're talking about young people who've gotten married or in relationships, they may keep money information secret because they don't trust. They want to hold on to that information and not let anybody know how much they have so that they can stay secure. Then there's the carefree. That person just never knows where their money is. Chances are that's the person who has the money thrown in the bottom of their purse, or they don't even know where their money is. Okay? And then planning, that's a person who likes to know where their money is and likes to know what they're going to do with their money. They have some idea of some goals, that they want to buy a car, that they want to get a dress, they want to help their parents out. They're planning for a wedding, and they start thinking about what I need to do in order to have that money. Status are people who like to use their money to make a positive impression. In general, that's the good thing. You want people to think about what's an appropriate thing to wear when I go for an interview. If I'm going over to my boyfriend's house or my girlfriend's house, what would be the appropriate way to dress? I should look good, and that's a good thing. And you don't want them to go overboard, though, because if they do, they'll be spending money to make an impression that may be a false impression. And the last one is the spontaneous person, and they use their money to enjoy the moment. Not concerned about the future. Don't think about that. If there's something they want to do right now, they're going to do it. So after you and your students have read through the cards, you've sorted them into 3 piles. You're going to take the pile that says that's definitely me and flip it over and sort it by the pictures on the back and put the other 2 piles aside for now. And when you get your instructor's kit, the guide gives you very specific directions for how to do this. Right? In this case, you can see, without knowing anything, this teen has more giving cards than anything else, and the chances are that when this kid gets money, the first thing they're going to think about is, oh, what can I do for someone else? How can I give it away? As opposed to, how can I use this to help me reach my goals? Okay. So let's look at the giving card. I talked to you about the interpretation cards. This is what an interpretation card looks like. The first thing on there, you use money to feel good by helping others. It's the message in the back of the brain. How others might see you. Well, they might see you as selfless and kind, or maybe they'll see you as a judgmental, or martyr. Somebody who's using money perhaps to say, you should do things my way. So for example, there were a couple of kids that went shopping, and one of them had more money than the other, and she was always buying things for her friend. But she wasn't buying them just to be nice. She was buying them because her friend thought she didn't approve of the clothes that she wore. So instead of her friend feeling good about receiving these things, she felt like she was being judged and put down for not having as much. The advantage of giving, sorry, there's a mistake on this card. All of the interpretation cards will have advantages. Every single habitude is positive and it's good. It's only if it gets overused. And then everyone has advantages, everyone has challenges. So for example, an advantage of giving is that you feel strong knowing that other people always depend upon you. And how does that affect people in relationships, that you're constantly giving and giving and giving, and your friends come to expect that you're always going to be there to help them out. You're always going to be there to buy things for them or do things for them. And then the challenges, one challenge might be that you give, but then you get disappointed when other people don't share your values and don't think of things the same way that you do. Right? So each of the interpretation cards has this. You start with the interpretation card for the ones that have the most in that pile, and then you go from there. And like I said, you get really good directions on that one card or in the guide. So after you've done all of this, what's next? If when your students have looked at these cards and they say, well, this is great, it's exactly how I like being, there's nothing I want to change, then that's wonderful. If it's working for them and they're satisfied, they're now more knowledgeable about who they are and what motivates them. But what if they're not satisfied? What if they got a lot of status cards and they're really concerned about being rejected? They want other people to accept them. What if they got a lot of security cards, and while that sounds good, they realize, you know what, I never have any fun. Maybe I need to lighten up again. In that case, if they're overusing it, you can look at the back of the card, and in the back of the interpretation cards, there are suggestions of things that teens and young adults can do, and hopefully they'll just pick one or two, try it out, and see how it works for them. Other things that they can do is to think about what's the real challenge. So for some of you that are working with financial literacy, you're going to be going next to, they need the skills. Is it that they don't really know about budgets? They don't really know about credit and the types of things that will help them. And then you're going to be teaching that.
I'm
or is
sorry.
that any information? Yeah.
I have a question for you that might be appropriate right now before we go to something else.
Okay.
Someone is asking if there are lessons to go with the cards, that they would really like to teach a full unit on money habitudes.
Oh, you are
Tell us
in
about
luck.
the teen, the money habitudes for teens curriculum.
Yes, you are absolutely in luck. Not only are there lessons, you get 5 lessons that are very comprehensive, and each of those lessons by itself could be made into multiple lessons. You also get, besides a sample deck of the Money Habitudes cards, you're going to be getting on cardstock a number of other cards that help look at messages. And then there's lots of different activities that you can use, as well as there's a student journal. The student journal is about 72 pages, and it allows students to look at how things develop in the way that they communicate about money, the way that they think about money. It also provides looking at SMART goals and how that works with the money habitudes. And the teacher's guide, again, includes all of that information, and it's very well done. I think many of you are already familiar with Jessica Poole and her work, and she and I work together on this, and I think you'll find it's very comprehensive and will meet your needs.
Yeah, and you can find that curriculum on our website at www.dibbleinstitute.org. And another question that kind of goes hand in hand with that, Sybil, and Irene, you might want to chime in too, since you work with and meet a lot of people that use money habitudes. They want to know how many, if you're teaching a class, for instance, if you're in a classroom setting, how many sets of cards do you actually need? And are there different ways that you can present the cards to the class so that maybe you wouldn't need one set per student? Can one of you answer that?
Yes.
Sybil, can you take that?
Sure. There's a lot of different ways to use the cards, and within the guide they will give you ways that you can use it in a classroom setting. So if you want to use them as a conversation starter or as a quick activity to start talking about money, you don't need a deck of cards for everybody. Sorry about that. On the other hand, if you on the other hand, if you want the students to really have a personal experience where they get to really understand what motivates them, then you really want them each to have their own deck of cards. So depending upon how you set up your classroom and your activities, I would definitely suggest that everybody has their own deck of cards. If they're doing it all at one time, that would mean if you have 20 kids, it would be 20 decks of cards. The one thing I will tell you is that these cards are almost indestructible. We have people who've been using them now for over 9 years, and they're still using their original cards. And they've been used with many different people. The boxes may fall apart, but the cards will last forever. So you do have options for using them as conversation starters, but it's really powerful when people do it for themselves.
If I could add, there's
Irene?
also different packets, classroom size sets available. When you look at the Dibble website, there are various ways to purchase them at different price breaks.
Yeah, and Irene, that answers kind of a question that Paula has about getting started with the whole program. She wanted to know, should she go ahead and purchase an instructor's kit? I'm sorry, I'm losing instructor's kit so they could see the materials, and does a kit include one of everything?
Yes, the original kit does include the instructor manual, the workbook, a deck of cards, and a CD.
And also the student journal.
Right.
Okay. And then, so I'm sorry, I'm going to go on. Is it okay if I get to go on into some of these questions? Because they're very interested in this. It's very interesting. So someone just wants to kind of clarify, if they have the cards already, she can get the sample lesson online. I know that. You can get it online on our website for free. But that will be just one sample lesson, correct? Irene?
Yes.
Right. She can download the sample lesson right off the website.
Okay.
And that would be the first lesson.
Okay. And Sybil, this is kind of a question for you, and it's maybe not necessarily for teens, but the question is, are there other resources for adults that you have?
Funny you should mention that. So the other resources for adults is there's a brand new deck of Money Habitudes cards for adults that was just revised, 5th grade reading level or less, and researched at Utah State University. So the statements have been changed to be even more valid, and that's available in English and in Spanish. There's a professional guide. The My Money Habitudes is a workbook. The Little Money Habitudes for Couples is there. And then Bringing Money into the Conversation is something that people can use if they're doing any kind of counseling and coaching. So if you're looking for the Dibble information, the instructor kit and the cards are all available through Dibble. And anything that you are interested in for the adults, just come to my website, and the information's right there. And happy to talk with anybody to give you more information if you need it. Are there any more questions, Cass?
I don't believe so. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn back over to our Dibble side, if that's okay. I'm going to let Irene kind of finish up because we don't want to put people over the 5 o'clock Eastern time
So I'd like to,
limit.
okay. So I would just like to thank everybody, and again, feel free to contact me at sybil@lifewise.us or give me a call at 910-399-2200, and happy to talk with you anytime. Thanks again. Good luck with all your money habitudes.
Well, thank you so much, Sybil. There is so much to be learned by using the money habitudes, and I think everyone will find them truly informative for themselves and their students as well. Thank you for joining us today. Our webinar will be available at the DibbleInstitute.org, www.dibbleinstitute. But I want you to know that if you have questions that come up later, anything that either to clarify what you heard today, or if you want to revisit the webinar, please do so. Again, on our Dibble website, the recording will be there. But I'm available, and Kathy as well, for questions, and that our email addresses are on the slide in front of you. Irene at DibbleInstitute.org or Kathy at DibbleInstitute.org. I want to remind you that our next webinar, free Wednesday webinar, is Love is in the Air, Preparing Students for Safe Proms and Spring Breaks. That date is March 13th, and Nancy Link, our outreach educator at the Dibble Institute, is going to be our presenter. And we look forward to hearing from you. Before you leave us, if you could take a minute to answer an evaluation form, we certainly would appreciate it, and are always open to hear of any topics that you feel you'd like to hear more about. We want to provide webinar information that is relevant to your needs. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It has been a pleasure to present Sybil to you, and we look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Have a great day and enjoy your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.